My name's Howard Monk. I run a company called The Local in London, and I work for a higher education institute called BIM London. There is a BIM in Berlin. I'm going to go visit there tomorrow and say hello. So I'm going to ask you now, who do we have in the room? Hands in the air, please. Do we have musicians and band members? Almost every single one of you. Okay, let's see how many people put their hands up again when I say potential people to work in the industry. Managers, agents, promoters. Okay, similar. Very good. I noticed there's one person who is purely, you there, purely business. I like that very much. You didn't put your hand up for a musician, and you're all about the Benjamins, which I like very much. What is a success for the above? Talk with the person next to you for 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. I'll give you as much time as I want. What do you think a success for the above is, and what do you think a failure is? Over to you. Okay, so when you've got a gap between you and the next person, now's the time to sort of get together. You can speak in twos, you can speak in threes, you can introduce yourselves. Okay, if you just arrived, talk to the people next to you and they'll explain what's going on.
Do you have any video clips?
I have one.
And do you check the sound?
No.
No?
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we can do that now. Do you want to check it now?
Only the...
It's from YouTube, and I saved it last night, and I watched it last night, and it did work offline.
Yeah, play it.
Coming
Yes.
through?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, you did? Okay. Cool.
Then it will work. Okay.
Cool. Okay, because we haven't got lots and lots of time, at midday, at 12, my alarm will go off, and then we can open the room for questions and answers. But I do want to repeat, if you ever have a question that you want answered during the session, then please just ask it. You, my friend there, who is awake, would you come and do the writing? So, from your groups, if a musician is going to be a success, what is a success for a musician? I'm only asking you because you're smaller than me, and I've got these old knees. So just shout out, what is a success for a musician?
It can be that the musician is satisfied with his art and with his music.
Satisfaction.
It's okay for a musician, but also for the people in the music industry, it's when you can go a little bit further.
So progress, shall we say? Achieving goals, progress. You can put it on both if you like. This is good, getting people to do the work for you. Happiness. Shit, this is not like a philosophy thing. Okay. It's all about money. Interest. Satisfaction of interest? Or striving for interest? You write very well. You've got very neat writing.
Are we striving for interest on the musician side?
You at the back and then you with the glasses. Financial success. Come on. I'm not all about the money. I didn't come here in my helicopter.
Getting every concert, getting 2 more people.
Okay, incremental success. So then, but then if you keep going, then it's like the pieces of rice on a chessboard, isn't it? Then there might not be enough people left on Earth. Everybody will reach their limit. Yes, so fame. You didn't want to say it because you're all modest and what have you. I mean, I think that there's something quite similar between Germans and Brits in terms of a perceived modesty, which is all bullshit. Everybody wants to be really famous. Yes, being booked. Okay, performing. Okay, so yeah, paid performances. Yeah, okay. My friend there. Fair paid. Okay, we could open a big can of worms with that comment. Good feedback. Making a living. Okay. An actual living. But here's my question to both you, and this is not connected to my presentation so much, but it is connected to something else, another discussion. When you decide, for example, to become a fiddle player, a violin player, did you expect an easy ride? Easy ride, an easy journey. Sure. Sure. And I'm just referencing in my mind there you know Amanda Palmer. Do you know who she is? But she was in a band, a punk band, the Dresden Dolls, and then she did a big crowdfunding campaign and she got millions. And then she asked via this crowdfunding campaign if some strings players could come and join her on the tour in different cities. She said, I won't pay you, but I'll give you lots of hugs and you can have some merch and you can come to the shows and hang out. And all the strings players, the fiddle players that I know, and string and fiddle players that around the world were aghast and agape at the audacity of this woman to have just made $1 million via crowdfunding and then to offer no money to these fiddle players. And which made me think, well, when you became a fiddle player, did you think that you were just going to be showered in money all the time? I think that there's an expectation versus a reality which needs to be addressed. And perhaps that's for another day. Howard Monk, Pop-Kultur 2018. Thank you very much indeed for my beautiful assistant there. Round of applause. So, when I wanted to talk about the difference in perception, perhaps, between success and failure, and in fact, how you might already be being quite successful without really knowing. George Bernard Shaw, if you look him up, an Irish writer from back in the day, who everything he said was just hilariously funny and bang on. And get used to being a failure, actually. And what I'm saying today is that there is a finest of lines between success and failure, and this is something that you should never do when you professionally make a presentation. That's read your own slides. But what I'm saying is it's all about perception. You're probably already being very successful in many ways right now. And if you listen through to the end, I'll share with you a tour story from a tour I was on in Germany, which included our front of house sound engineer, who is subsequently gone on to become a Grammy-winning and Oscar-winning producer. How about that? Okay, I'm also saying you'll probably start something on your own as a musician or as somebody in the industry. You're not going to walk into a job at Universal. All right. Oh, thank you. I've got some, but in a glass bottle, actually. In a glass bottle, mit fein perlig. No, it's fein perlig. Anyway, thank you anyway. There's water outside. You'll likely have many strands of income. You'll have what is now known as a portfolio career. Survival is the new success. This is an Irish promoter said this at an event similar to what you're at here that I was at. And for a small organization, and your band is a small organization, survival is point number one. I think you guys touched on it there. Making sure that you're getting to the next one, making sure you're getting a couple more people, making sure everything is improving and progressing. About me. I went to university, get me. I started a band with a friend there called Billy Mahoney. We played all over the place in Europe, and certainly in Berlin. We played in a place called The Bastard. Is it still there? Well, I played there with another band as well. I started a company called NOM, which is my name backwards. Oprah? Yeah, what about that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, she's an inspiration. NOM, my company changed. I changed the name of my company to The Local, but my holding company is still called NOM Limited. I worked for a couple of years at the Arts Council of England. I started to become aware of where money can come from for arts projects. I started to think about my work rather less as just about rock and roll and more about part of the fabric of the arts in general and how important it all is. So I started to become aware of how important what it is that we're doing is, rather more than I want to be famous, which is a perfectly legitimate reason to want to do something. I want to do this because it's exciting, because I enjoy hanging out with the people, all the people here last night, all super cool, all the beautiful people of Berlin in one place. My then girlfriend, now wife, said to me one day, "You have so many good ideas." They're not all good. And they're not even half good. But you should go and study, do an MBA or something to help make these things a reality. I was like, it's a great idea. So I went and did an MBA, and it rekindled my love of academia and education. Excuse me, drinking too much fizzy water. And so I started to get involved. It is fine pearling, so it's only a fine burp. It's a little burpette. And so a friend was running a course, and she said, I need a teacher from the real world to come and do the music business module. I said, I think I could do that. And so 2 or 3 years later, I now run the music event management course at BIM London. And so I've got a kind of a 1 foot in pure concrete horrible experience and 1 other foot in pure concrete horrible academia. Such is my amazing life. So this is what I've been called a music entrepreneur by a journalist once, and I quite like that. I thought that was quite nice. I've also been called an idiot many times. If I have to call myself something, I would say I'm a live music professional, if I have to say it in as few words as possible. So I organize shows, I organize tours. Alexis Taylor, who is playing tonight, who played last night, that came about through my work. And that's what I do. When I'm an agent, the difference between a good agent and a bad one is a good agent's assistant. This is a possibility for somebody in the room. An agent's assistant, going in and doing all the donkey work, helping out, making sure everything gets tidied up. So when I'm an agent, I need help. I need to work with people. At the beginning, I forced some of you to go and speak to your colleagues next to each other. It's not always the most intuitive thing to go up to somebody that you don't know and to start to try and work with them, but it's actually something that you will absolutely do. And you will do if you're a musician. You'll get put into situations. If you become a musician of with any kind of 2 more people per show, any kind of renown, then somebody from across the world might, if you're selling records or you're selling your music all over the place, somebody might say, I really love your stuff, will you come and help with this? And you might have to walk into a room full of people that you'd have never met before and actually work with them under great pressure of not being a dick. So, my mid-career crisis happened around the time when I was, when I had that conversation with Sarai. You should do an MBA, you should look at what you do. And so I looked into what I do, and I looked into what a lot of other people do in my immediate circle. And I came across this document, and you can find it, it's free, you can download it. It's called The Pro-Am Revolution by Charles Lebet. It's not even new, it was a few years ago that I read it, but it was written in 2004 and published in 2004. I'm quite happy if you send me an email to send you these slides and to send you the final slide with the recommendations of things that you might want to read. Anyway, this guy in 2004, this academic, started to talk about a breed of amateurs. Now, I looked up the German for amateur. It is amateur. But also, real quick, hands in the air. Do you think amateur means something positive or negative? Positive, hands in the air. It means something negative, hands in the air. So an amateur, so our perception of amateur is of something negative. And the same in French is not complete. When I looked it up, just to check that I wasn't bullshitting. Now I speak a bit of German, but I speak much better French. And I've always understood in the French language that the word amateur does not have a negative connotation. Amateur de musique, that means that I'm really, really into music and I'm probably quite knowledgeable about it and I really love it. It does so happen, it's certainly by this dictionary that I found, it was only a very quick search that I did, that it can have some kind of sort of negative connotation. I just want to share with you this. This is, it's always nice when you see big fuck-ups on the like on the BBC, or I was once at the Royal Festival Hall. One of my artists was playing a show, and it was one of those shows where it was a tribute to the Velvet Underground and Nico. And loads of people were coming on and singing a song by Nico or Velvet Underground. And loads of famous people like PJ Harvey and Jarvis Cocker and all kinds of people like that were singing. But then my artist at the time, Liz Green, she was going to do a song. And when it was her turn, I was at the side of the stage here. And the guy, the host, the compere, he walked on with the microphone, started talking, and there was no sound. The microphone was switched off. And my first thought was, brilliant, that's fucking excellent. It doesn't only happen to me, it happens to everyone. So things can go wrong and things can fail. But here's the first time the Stone Roses appeared on the BBC.
That your hands will do. Your final flight can't be delayed.
sorry about that. Looks like we've had a power shortage or something. So we'll move on to the next item. And
You have to listen to what the singer is shouting in the background.
They ask you to come and then you make
Martin Parr is one of Britain's leading photographers, known for his innovative colour work and for creating a new school of British documentary photography.
You're wasting our time, lad.
We'll do it. We'll sort it out in a minute. His latest book, The Cost of Living, chronicles how the comfortable classes spend their time and money. But like some of his previous work, the latest photographs are controversial. Critics allege he's exploiting his subjects rather than making social commentary.
Amateurs!
He has already agreed to take 2 of the photographs out of his current exhibition after complaints from the people in them.
Okay. So there's, I'll switch that off. Amateurs, certainly not meant as a compliment. Certainly not meant as a compliment. Sorry, there's me again, not using the microphone. So, interesting. I just thought that I thought that just occurred to me. That's the first time they'd appeared on the TV. They had actually gone. They'd only recently, in their minds, gone from being amateurs to professionals. We're on the fucking BBC, lads. And then, so the last thing they expected was the kind of problems that they were going to have, and so. Possibly, it was such a shock to be reminded that things can go wrong wherever, and so they were suddenly thrust back into their world, the horrible world, or so they thought, of being amateurs. So anyway, this guy, Charles Ledbetter, he wrote The Programme Revolution. It's about 70 pages long. It's a long read, but essentially he talks about people who are doing things to a very professional level, and yet they're not doing it as their main source of income. And he'll talk about open source programmers. He'll talk about the territorial army, the reserve army, people who do it on a weekend. They go and put on a military uniform and go running around in fields with guns and stuff. And there's at every football match in the UK, there's volunteer ambulance and medical staff. They're called St. John's Ambulance. They're not proper doctors and medics, but they certainly have an awful lot of medical and medical training, and and I would certainly, if I fell or under a bus, I would much prefer somebody from the St. John's Ambulance be on hand than you, for example. So this guy has done a 70-page document all about people producing professional quality work only in an amateur setting, and I don't believe he spends enough time on bands, even any. Because at the end of it, I just thought this is what being in a band is. You work, or you go to school, or you go to college, and then in the evening, you meet with your friends that you've got a band together with, and you rehearse together, and you make songs, and you work on them, and then you work on them again, and then you analyse that, and then you work on it again. And that is actually the life of a pro-am. Now here is a person talking about the value to the economy of this professional amateur sort of dichotomy, and what he's done basically to me is talked about what all of us do. We do a load of stuff, and we improve. We get 2 more people each time. We try and make progress with it. We see how it can be made better. And if anybody is not necessarily a musician, if I've organised a show and I've had 50 people come and watch a few bands play, the proper way of doing it is to think, okay, well, next time we'll try and do it a little bit better. How can we make it happen so that 70 people come next time, and that we make a little bit of money or a lot of money, and we keep it and we don't pay the musicians. So loads of people say often, Howard, give me some advice, I'm a musician. And the first thing I would say is probably get a job, so that you can worry less about those mundane things that might bother you and interfere with your creative process. Now, it's not great news that you to hear, but I stand by it. And a little anecdote, a friend of mine who is now some kind of big shot. I'm friends with him on Facebook. We were friends at university, but I've not seen him for a long time, but we're friends on Facebook. He's from Belfast, and he's some kind of big shot at Google or Facebook. He's always updating his status from different parts of the world or so. But he was a DJ at college. And just after college, he said, yeah, I went on the dole. Being on the dole means being unemployed and taking money, 50 quid a week or whatever from the state. And he said, I did that because I wanted to practice DJing all day, every day. He said, I didn't do it. I just got stoned all day, every day, and didn't do any of that. And said, but when I got a job again, the time was so precious. I had 3 or 4 hours between getting home and having dinner and going to sleep that I really put the time in. So these are mundane little bits of kind of recommendations which are not super exciting, but I think that they will assist with the productivity and the creative process. Nobody will ever stop you thinking in your mind about it when you're doing your crappy job, whatever it is. And wanting to help. This is something which nobody dislikes hearing. So I teach at BIM, right, at this university, and I'm always shocked and horrified and I'm also shocked and horrified if a band emails me, hi Howard, can I have a gig please? Here's my links to my band, and it's like some kind of death metal band or so. And not that I don't like that kind of music, but I don't promote that sort of stuff. So it's like, how much research have you done? You've just wasted your time and mine, so on your way. But the best thing to do is, hi Howard, we met at the gig the other night that I came to, of yours. It was really good, I really enjoyed it. I think maybe my band might be suitable for one of your nights, or I'd love to help out if I can. How can I help? People always like hearing that. How can I help? So if you're looking to help in a business capacity, friends, bands, or any band that you like, just saying, how can I help for at the beginning is a great thing, and people like to hear that. It doesn't mean that you're submissive and you're giving in and you're not as good as them, and it also helps you to help yourself. I wanted to say another thing, but I've forgotten it. It'll come back. It's a great start. So finding a way to help people is a good thing. What I talked about before, your portfolio career, it's having more than one revenue stream. It's the same as being an artist. I was with Alexis last night. He's got a main band. It's Hot Chip. He makes most of his living from Hot Chip. He's got his solo project. That's another thing, and it's started to generate a bit of income. He's a producer. He gets income from the producing. He gets all these different revenue streams. These are all really possible things which can and ought to be sort of explored by anybody wanting to start out in this sort of game. One thing does lead to another. Freelancing is another word for this portfolio career. Some things are just byproducts of others. I've got a thing called Folk Idol. And it came from an idea that we wanted to do something called Post-Rock Idol at an ATP festival. And it was complicated and it didn't work. But folk was getting a big resurgence, and I was working a lot in folk music, and I wanted to kind of poke fun, make fun, or take the piss off the folk scene, anybody taking themselves too seriously. So the rules are, you have to sing a folk song, you have to wear a false beard, and if you win vegetables. And this is something that I've now done for 10 years at a Camp Festival Festival. I get paid really quite well for it, and it's become like I've become sort of a children's entertainer for 3 days per year. But they pay quite well, but also I get 20 guests for this festival every year, and I can invite all friends and family, and everybody has a great time. So, and this is just a lovely thing to do. It is quite strange when I'm talking to a cool American band about helping them get some shows, and I get them a show at this festival, and then they come and see their new agent wearing a false beard, being mean to children. it kind of, well, it's their problem. It's not mine. how they view me, but it's something that I do, and it's an awful lot of fun. But a lot of things can come just by being really open-minded. There is a caveat to this, which does mean that somebody might very well, you with your New York t-shirt, you might think, all I want to be is a promoter, and then be perfectly sort of focused on that. Or all I want to be is a bass player and be perfectly focused on that. But I think that while that probably helps in focusing terms, it maybe it narrows down options elsewhere. So this is why, in my view, those fiddle players, those violinists, got so hissy about Amanda Palmer, because all they can do is play the fucking violin. I do recommend looking at Amanda Palmer's work. She does you know TED, those video talks? She does a TED talk, and it's really quite interesting and inspiring. And she wrote a book. Somebody bought me this book, and I've not read it. And I think it's because the foreword, you know, the introduction just before the book starts, it's written by Bono from U2. And I just think, oh, yeah, you've ruined it now. Anyway, moving on. So, here are some thoughts about going to work. Here's me that I had my own band, and we kind of managed ourselves, and we were all doing our own thing for ourselves. And then I've run my own organization, my own operation, of which I've been the boss, and with different degrees of effectivity, of productivity, but it's always been about me. And so here's me now with an MBA and going to actually interview. It's the first time that I can remember that I saw a job advertised, applied for it, sent in a CV, went to an interview, and then got the job. And so I've got to learn now how to work in a big organization with lots of people. And when you work in a smaller organization, and when you're in a band with 4 or 5 other people, 3 or 4 other people, if you see bullshit, you say bullshit. And so here's Howard now in a big organization going around telling people that they're bullshit. And it doesn't work like that. It can't work like that, because there are people who coast along and don't do a really good job, but they keep their job. But that's actually often how organizations work. Other people get by on the work that you've done. That's kind of normal. So it's been a big learning thing for me. But then it just occurred to me, the wider music community is like one big organization. If you're a dick, somebody in Paris is going to know that you're a dick. And then somebody in London will know that, and then the Glasgow promoters are going to know that, and they go, oh, you got that band? Yeah, good luck with that. They're dicks. So, if there's, another friend of mine, Andy Ingalls, he's a tour manager and manager of artists. He does shit like this too. And his final slide is always, work hard and don't be a dick. And that's really good advice, I think. Because when I started out, most of the booking agencies and management agencies, seriously, were in London. Now there's a bunch in Brussels of big sort of international booking agencies. There's loads in Berlin. There's it matters very little where you are. There's a bunch in Hamburg, there's some in Marseille, there's lots in Paris. Of course, you'll specialize in your own country, your own territory, but then you will work with people from all over the world. And if you're a dick, then the word will get out. And I've been a dick in the past, and I dare say I will be again in the future. But you can't. Sometimes it's just difficult not to be. But then people talk, and then be nice to people. Being nice to people, working hard, and being nice to people is really, really crucial in this. And I think that I saw it last night with a very experienced Alexis doing his sound check, and I didn't notice that it wasn't going well. But there was an issue with the monitor, But and they just worked it through, and at the end, Alexis went over and said thank you so much. And then afterwards, he explained to me how it had been a little bit difficult. And I just said, well, it was incredibly patient, the way that you dealt with it and the way that you got what you wanted. So there's an element of not being a dick, which is important. Okay, I've got through these slides rather quicker than I thought, so we've got a little bit of time. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories, and then then we can do questions for sure. That's the last one. Okay, some success stories. Long time ago, probably in around 2002, 3, 4, something like that, Jose Gonzalez, the label came to me, said, we want a show for this new artist we've got. Sent me the music, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. Yeah, we'll do a little show. And we did a show in a venue, the Old Blue Last in London. I didn't know. He was kind of a big deal already in Sweden at that time. And so I arrived to run the show, and it was already completely rammed with like 2 meters tall, blonde Swedish girls. I was like, this is the kind of gig. And then Jose's career sort of exploded, and he got a bigger agent, and they got bigger promoters and what have you. And then maybe 8-10 years later, I saw him at a gig at a festival in Brussels. And I said, hey, we did that show a long time ago. And he said, I remember that show. This is a prime example of absolutely not being a dick. I really remember. I remember that show, really shitty little venue, shitty PA. He said, but my publisher came to that show. I got the publishing deal from that show. The advert for the Sony TV with the balls falling down the street in San Francisco, that happened because of that show. So he could actually see what that success was. So I walked home from the show, maybe I made 50 quid or 100 quid. Do you want to come in, madam? Come on in. So he made 50, I made a few pounds. It was a sold out show. So there's a success that's happened there. I made a few pounds, and I made a friend, and it was nice. The band, the opening act, Barbarossa, that was just James on a guitar at the time. He now is the guitar player and keyboard player for Jose Gonzalez whenever he records and tours. So that's another way to look at this as a success. And Jose says hello and remembers the show. That makes me feel nice and warm inside. There's a lot of ways that you can look at things and say, well, that was a success. Even a show with 30 people in it, it can be really important to somebody. This is something that working at the Arts Council sort of really taught me, because when you apply for money from the Arts Council, you fill in a big application form, of course, and you have to justify what it is you're doing. And it makes you think about what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing it. Because why? You know, we have said fame and we have said recognition. And look, mummy, am I not clever? But there's something about art and culture and the ability to transform somebody's life just because they saw a shitty show in a back of a pub that just really resonated with them. And so that's why we've probably been drawn to this part of the world and part of the economy. And so you do try and find ways to justify what it is you're doing, and you do try and find ways in as much as you can to see something as a success rather than as a failure. The only way that I really think that you could see things as a failure is if you're losing money, but then consistently losing money. Something has to change. And I've been in that very situation, and you have to make decisions and change things. And often it's not about that sort of perception. I was talking to a friend who's a journalist, and I saw her on a TV show. She was being interviewed about an artist. So a big artist was having an hour program about them, and Sophie appeared talking about this artist. And I was like, saw you on the TV, that's awesome, things must be really going well for you. She's like, yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? I was on TV twice that week and I still couldn't make my rent at the end of that month. So the perception of stuff is not always the case, especially in in an industry like this, where it's all about your social media, how many people are at your shows, and how much you are feeling about how your progress is happening. There's an artist. She's a friend in London, and when you ask her how she is, how are you, she never answers how she is. She tells you how her project is going. That's how wedded to the things that artists can be. And so in a way to try and separate that and actually step back and take a look at it and say, how is this working? Then that's really good. Tiny Ruins is an artist from New Zealand who has done an awful lot of work and is signed now to Bella Union Records. We worked with her from not the very, very beginning, but almost the beginning. And we got her to a fantastic situation just before she fired me. I knew that this was coming, but it is still one of the best tours I've ever booked. There was maybe 1 or 2 days off on a 2 or 3 week stint. Electric Picnic Festival in Ireland, End of the Road Festival in England, Number 6 Festival in Wales, festival in Scotland, shows in beautiful venues in the country and in London, sold out, all kinds of things like that. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. And but communication is always really important. And I would just, if I'm given a 2 week or a 3 week period by an artist to fill with dates and a tour that I can route around, then I think, yeah, that's what I'll do. And there was one morning and it was kind of big, the drive, but they went to sleep the night before for about 20 minutes and had to get up and go to the next show because it was a really, really long drive, and they were not happy. And that's not the reason why I got fired, but it certainly didn't help. But it's still, when I look at the tour, and I also get it because agents and people in the industry look. I got Rob Chalice, the agent for Bon Iver and Sufjan Stevens and Yo La Tengo and any number of other quite big bands. He emailed me, said, "Good tour, excellent tour." I was like, oh, "Thanks, Rob." It's like being anointed by Christ himself. Okay, the National is. I did work with the National from the very beginning, their first 2 tours, and I lost that gig because this is me surviving in a small organisation setting. I once, and sometimes will still do, look at that as something of an affliction, something of a lack of ambition, but it doesn't. I don't believe that it really does show that. But the National didn't need somebody working in a boutique booking agency. They needed a big-time booking agent. They got a manager, and they were moving at such a quick rate, and so that made sense that they move on. I lost contact somewhat with the National. I'm friends with a couple of the members of the band on the social medias and stuff, but there was a big show, Alexandra Palace, 10,000 people. They did 2 nights. This was about 2 or 3 years ago, and I was working late in the night at my computer, and my phone started vibrating, and tweets were coming in and texts, and they said, "Are you at Alexandra Palace? Are you at Alexandra Palace right now?" And I was like, "No." And there's a lot of love for you at Ali Pali just now. And apparently they'd said, because Alexandra Palace is very close to where I used to live, and they used to stay at my house when they played, and they'd started to talk about me, because I think somebody had told Matt that I was there, and I wasn't. I'm kind of glad that I wasn't, but they dedicated this song to me. But but then at the end of it, it was a song, a really dirty sort of theme to the song, and so he kind of apologized and said, "I'll dedicate this one instead," and he did the next one, and then it was the same thing again. It's always the same with the National, right? So they ended up dedicating about 3 or 4 songs to me, which is very nice, isn't it? But I think that I would have kind of died. And my current roster, I've got a bunch of bands that are on it. There's a band called The Anatomy of Frank from the US, very good, a little bit Sufjan Stevens, a little bit Ziggy Ross. I think that there's potential for them. And I also have taken care to have a good few conversations with them to try and find out to what extent they want to work, to what extent they want to put in the hours and put in the effort. There's too many bands that I've worked with when the bass player decides to, and it's the bass player's band, I'm going to become a graphic artist instead, or a writer, and he's like, what about these 2 years of work that we've just done? And we've got 80 people coming to your London show now, which is the beginning of something quite good. So it's important for, if you're working as an industry person, that you get a good idea that the band is actually serious and wants to work and wants to do this stuff, because you don't want to waste any time. I've got another band called Rain Brother from Denmark, really good. I'm very sore and very angry about the whole Brexit thing. And so I am actually making it an absolute priority that I work with artists from all over Europe and sort of contribute to a European cultural sort of growth as much as I can. So Rain Brother, the Danes, they're on it. They're very good. Who else have I got? Fell, a band called Fell. They're from the northwest of England, which is where I'm from, which is where the Stone Roses are from. And Alexis Taylor, of course. I'm sure there are a bunch more. Yes, there are. RM Hubbard. There's a whole bunch. But listen, you'll check out my website, please do, and send me any inquiries or requests for links and what have you, and I'll be very glad to answer any further questions. The final slide is, ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better.